Welcome to Look, Listen, Laugh. Now this episode, you may recognize my guest from his multiple TV appearances, from Flight of the Conchords to What We Do in the Shadows. He's an award-winning stand-up comedian who is someone I've probably spent more time with on tour than anyone else. I hold this guy very dear. Enjoy my conversation with Arj Barker. Well, Arj.
Yeah, hold on. We're starting?
Fantastic. It's great to... Look, you, Arj, when I think of you, you're someone that turns up, right? Important things in my life, you've always showed up for. My wedding during the COVID.
Of course.
You had to drive. There were no flights. This was COVID lockdown. And there was a little gap in the window there. You got in your car, you drove from Melbourne, like 10 hours or something, to Sydney to come to my wedding. The day after, you drove straight back.
Dangerous.
When I had my big film premiere for the night in lockdown, short film I made, who was there at the premiere? You just flew up for the premiere.
Well,
and I know that you don't really do podcasts.
That's not true.
Well,
I just don't do a ton.
Yeah.
But I do. I don't get asked to do that many, and I don't do every one that I'm asked to do, but I do them sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you've turned up for this, so I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure, yeah. Well, I mean, likewise, you've turned up for important things in my life as well.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're like brothers.
Yeah, let's not pretend to the audience watching this that we're not like best friends.
Just randomly turning up.
That's why I thought this conversation is going to be a little awkward, because I'm like, well, we already spend like 8 hours a day together.
Well, yeah, it is. And half of the things that you and I talk about, or the way that we talk, I don't think it's going to translate for an audience anyway. Like, we have a way of talking and communicating that to other people in restaurants might look weird, like certain certain ways of communicating that we don't need to get into.
Okay, sure.
In fact, I remember we were sitting at a restaurant in where were we? This was in
Raku?
Alice Springs years ago. And it was a fine dining restaurant, and we turned up and they just had like a love seat for two for us, and we sat down. It was like candlelight, and he just turned to me and goes, "You do realise that I've had more candlelight dinners with you, Joel, than any other woman in my life."
Yeah, well, I don't think I said any other woman, because that implies you're a woman. but more than anyone else, probably, because we used to eat, as you know, we used to eat a lot of fine dining. And now we shifted. We eat strictly Thai.
Every meal.
And we get, of course, the tour meal is pad see ew with tofu and vegetables.
Yes.
And green curry, tofu and vegetables, mild. And rice.
Yes. Sometimes it's not so mild, but unless it's pre-made.
Yeah.
And it's easy, because that's one thing, we've been touring together for a long time on the road. When your first national tour happened, you asked me, you want to come on the road? And of course, and we've been touring ever since.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful to have you on my tours. I don't know if I could do it without you at this point.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Yeah?
Well, I know that I couldn't do it without you, so...
Well, you could, because you already tour with a lot of other comedians and stuff. We won't mention them.
Yeah. But it is. But we've got a very well-oiled system going when we tour. Like we know exactly. We've been to a lot of these towns, the same towns. We know exactly where to go, where to stay. All the timings, like it flows very well. Unless we're in like Port Lincoln, where we had to break into a camping ground in order to do our washing.
Port Hedland.
Port Hedland, you're right. It was Port Hedland. I always get those two confused. Port Hedland is in regional WA in the middle of nowhere. It's a mining town. You and I had to climb into a camping ground and do our washing while there was no one there during the day.
Yeah, it was like where the miners stay, as I recall. And we got it done.
Now, touring Australia compared to America, I know it's kind of a mundane question, but in terms of, do you find the audiences to be more diverse in Australia or more diverse in America?
I don't know what you mean by diverse.
Well, in terms of sensibility and, do you find it across the board Australian audiences to be similar, or depending on the town that you're in? Or do you find...
Yeah, I mean, they change with the town because the demographics change. So, if you're in wealthy suburb of Sydney, you feel that you meet the people after, and you see that they get the popped collar, and they're a little more they're a little more of the boating sector. But you go out to some of the places that keep it more real, and then you can see the difference. And it's nothing against any of those people, but you do notice the demographic change just the same way. You go to a different side of Melbourne, you see a different demographic. You might see more ethnic diversity, or it might be really, really white, primarily white. So it just changes. Yeah. But that's the same in the States. I mean, you can do the same thing. Sure. You go to Colorado Springs versus Cleveland or something, you're going to see a different thing happening. Yeah, and Chicago or whatever.
And in terms of your sensibility, because sometimes like Americans, like I don't know, they find it difficult to translate to Australian audiences sometimes. But you made that transition really early on, and it just like your sensibility seemed to resonate with the Australian.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do anything except come over here originally and just do my jokes that I thought were good jokes. Yeah, I thought. The only thing as a comedian you can look out for is references that don't translate. So I'm not going to talk about a specific neighborhood in San Francisco unless it maybe unless it's super famous. You could talk about the Golden Gate Bridge, but you wouldn't probably reference the Mission District in Sydney. Right. So it's just like watching your references. I don't have jokes about. Oh yeah, I used to have a few Golden Gate Bridge jokes, but you. What are we doing? I forgot. Yeah. Anyway.
But speaking of San Francisco,
I just did my stuff that I thought was going to work. Yeah. And I liked the audience, and I warmed to the audience. It was quite mutual, and I had such a great time. My first shows were in Sydney, and then I branched out, came to Melbourne, and it was a very natural fit for me. So I was thankful that people, dug my stuff, but I don't really know. I didn't really overanalyze it. Figure out, I can't put it into an equation. Yeah, sure. Like what works. But I'm not trying to sound defensive, but I still do okay in the States. Like, people still get my stuff. I still have a great time performing there, although I've cut back a little. Since COVID, I stayed more out in Australia because my dogs are here. Yeah, mainly. Sure. And a lot of good friends and a lot of work. And, so there's a lot of reasons, but life just has a way of sort of, directing you, and you can push against it, or you can I'm just kind of going with the flow. Yeah. Trying to.
Yeah. Well, speaking of San Francisco, that's your home turf. You grew up in Fairfax, and
I grew up technically in San Anselmo, California, but I spent a lot of time in Fairfax. Which is right next to it. Yes. So San Anselmo, Fairfax, and you could ride your BMX. This was like I lived Stranger Things. As my buddies.
That's what I love about
my friends and I would, we'd all meet up on our bikes and we're going around, getting into minor trouble, nothing too serious. Smoking a little. Someone would steal like, half a joint from their parents, and we'd go into the woods, and it's not great, but we weren't doing anything super super bad, but it was fun.
When you talk about going into the woods, you literally it's because that's where George Lucas shot Return of the Jedi, the Ewok village nearby there, and you got these massive redwoods there. It's literally going into the woods. It's such a.
We ate a burrito there together right before I got married in the same woods where they shot some of Return of the Jedi.
We did,
and that's called Roy's Redwoods.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's nice. It was a nice place to grow up, to be honest.
Because when I went to Fairfax for the first time, I'm looking around, and that is the area that I felt this is the ultimate 80s town to grow up in. This whole area around here is it's like when I think of 80s, jumping on your BMX bike, going down to the classic cinema, seeing a movie, jumping on the bike, taking off into the woods, hanging out with friends.
Now it's a lot gentrified, so it's very much like the real estate's gone. And it happens everywhere. It's a beautiful little town, and so the money follows eventually. But anyway, back then it was kind of a little grotty, and it was 80s style, so the parents didn't know where their kids were and just thought they'll return at some point because they need food and shelter. And that was basically the 80s vibe. And I thought they nailed that pretty well in the Stranger Things when they would show their dad just like asleep in the chair.
Passed out, yeah.
And not that I mean, my dad wasn't asleep in a chair, but it's true. Your parents didn't really. They had no way to know where you were, what you were doing, unless they try to keep you on a, like you have to be on. But some parents were more strict. But thankfully, my folks were like, hey, it'd be nice if you joined us for dinner sometimes. And so, I was home by dinner usually, but it was like that scene, and there was a lot of creeks, so you'd have that neighborhoods, and then there was always creeks running through these towns, and that's where you could go down there, and that's borrowing a little bit or reminiscent of like of it. They were always going down to the creek to like throw rocks or build a fort, all that kind of stuff. There were bullies you had to watch out for. Yeah. So there was also a bit of. It was a classic. It was total 80s style for sure. I mean, it was the 80s, to be fair.
Well, during that time, they were filming Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade. They filmed there.
Yeah.
And didn't your friend try and...
You know that. I've told you that story a million times. Why would you ask me about something you already know?
Well, not everyone else knows. I find the story interesting.
Okay, because of the podcast.
I'm trying to set this with the podcast.
It's for the podcast.
Look, I know certain things. I try and set it up, set you up on the story, let you go. Yeah.
A guy called Charlie Cadoni.
Yeah.
Wait. I think it was Charles Cadoni. I might be getting his last name wrong. I haven't said it in so long. Charles Cadoni. His name was Charles or Chuck.
Yeah.
I think it was Cadoni, if I have his last name. Apologies if I don't, if he's out there. They were filming I think it was The Last Crusade. It was the one with
Sean Connery.
Yeah. And he was in a tree or something with a camera. Like, I don't know, because there's a movie in a small town, so it's, people had heard about it, so
sure.
He somehow snapped a picture of Harrison Ford digging for gold, let's say, and I saw the photo. He had it.
Is Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones? He's got the hat, the gear on,
I recall. No, it's a long time ago.
Right.
But as I recall, he's dressed as Indiana Jones, and he's firmly
picking his nose.
Has his finger in his nose. Yeah. And I did see the photo, as I recall. But to his credit, Charlie never released the photo.
Great.
He showed maybe a few people, and it was sort of funny. But he never tried to sell it to the newspaper or did anything, because I think he felt like that was not a nice thing to do to someone.
Sure, he's like paparazzi with a conscience.
And we were only teenagers, so it showed a lot of moral character, I think.
Sure.
Because he probably could have gone to National Enquirer or something, and they love that kind of stuff.
But did you ever have like a desire to go out and see, like when you're a kid, you find out someone's filming somewhere, you go along and try and check it out?
No, because I never really knew about any of these movies happening till after the fact.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know why or
the news didn't spread throughout the community, and
it was pre-internet.
Yeah, I know that. But all the kids talk. It's like you see the film trucks going by. Where are they filming?
Somewhat.
Word gets around.
Somewhat, but things move so much slower. Information moves so much slower, and so for instance, if something is happening in a neighboring town, I have to physically go out and run into someone. It's all about physical contact to pass information. There's no, there's no way to know. So this. And plus, I'm a kid, and I don't know why I didn't know that these things were happening. Maybe I heard that they're filming a movie, but I don't know. And
do you think it was better during that time? Like you say, when you find out the information, it's something important, or you have that photo, and it's just you're not looking it up online. It feels more unique to you. It's more special.
I mean, it's easy to be nostalgic about times when technology wasn't as good, but there's so many benefits from the internet and negatives as well. But who can say? Many people's lives, for instance, have been saved because of the internet, and pets, for instance, they can get the information out there. People wouldn't have been able to say, "Oh, I recognize that person," because we only had milk cartons initially for missing people, and not everyone drinks milk. So now everyone's online. So if there's an Amber Alert, the way they can send it in the States, if a child gets kidnapped, they literally can. It's a bit big brother, but they can send an alert to everyone's mobile phone and say, "Look out for this car." So there's, you could argue lots of benefits. And then negatives, of course, disinformation, the spread of propaganda and hate and all that. That was just different. But it's easy to be nostalgic, of course, back then, how things were simpler. But, we got to live that, and so I'm thankful for that.
So during that time, because I'm bringing it around to your favorite album.
Oh.
In that time, you would listen to an album, right? You wouldn't just, because nowadays you hear with Spotify, you see the song and you just go to that. Oh yeah, a lot of people do, and skip over the album. But back in those days, when you got a record, you listened to that like from start to finish.
I know what you're asking. I was on the tail end of albums, so my first albums were albums, and I know which ones they were too.
I know too. Your very first album, which I'm very glad to have this connection with you on.
Hotel California?
No. Glass Houses, Billy Joel.
No, that wasn't my first album.
You told me that was your first album years ago. No?
I didn't. It was definitely because I had that on cassette tape.
Oh, well, okay. Your first cassette tape.
It was one of my first cassette tapes.
Right.
So my first albums were, and I'm not sure maybe the exact order, but they were Yellow Submarine, the Beatles. But I think my first one ever was Hotel California.
Okay, all right.
Yellow Submarine and Billy Squier, which I don't remember the name of his album, but it was the one. He was a bit of a one and a half hit wonder.
Right.
He had Everybody Wants You. So that was a big song. And by the way, MTV's just coming out, so we're starting to see and watch these videos multiple times a day and getting, it was a big deal just to sit there and watch. For the folks in Australia, it'd be like Rage 24/7.
Yeah.
Where it's just music and a little talking in between. But it's before MTV went into all the reality stuff. And anyway.
But it revolutionized the music industry, MTV, when that came
it made
out.
some artists really big, too.
Sure.
There's a funny story about Billy Squier. Not funny to him. Hopefully he could laugh about it now. But I'm not going to go into it. But if anyone's curious, they should look what happened when he released his second huge video.
Right, okay.
It's the one where he's crawling around in sort of almost like lingerie and wearing makeup.
Right.
And it was somewhat of a poor decision in retrospect for his popularity.
And it wasn't well received then either?
No, I think that's what really put a damper on a very, very hot career up to that point. Okay. Literally, I think it was a bad decision. I'm not an expert of the story, but that's why, and I didn't want to spend 10 minutes on it.
Yeah, sure. We can look it up.
People can look it up. It's kind of.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Hopefully, he can laugh about it now. And he, look,
It's like, I ruined my career. No big deal.
True, but he also was bigger than most artists ever could dream of being. I mean, you got to try to be thankful for what you have. But anyway, look, I don't know the guy. I think he's still alive. Anyway,
But like I always say, if when people go, they're a one-hit wonder, that's fantastic. To become a one-hit wonder is an anomaly.
You're a wonder.
Yeah.
You're a wonder. Most artists would love to be. I'll take wonder as long as I'm a wonder. But people want to be the Stones, or they want to be, they want to be absolutely iconic, legendary. But we always talk about. And you talk about it on stage, like even if you're the biggest, for instance, Johnny Carson.
Yeah. The biggest name in America in
entertainment. He was there's no one bigger. Now I bet if you ask a teenager now who Johnny Carson is, they don't know. A lot of them probably don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like, I don't know, I've heard it, but they wouldn't know. Yeah, fucking Tonight Show host, like legendary.
But even me as a kid in Australia, we never got the Tonight Show, but I still knew who Johnny Carson was.
Yeah,
that's how.
And he was even among big stars. There was like, Johnny Carson's at the party, and they'd all be around him. I read a biography once, so that's how I know that.
Pushkin.
So my first cassettes, getting back on track, because I know you don't have a ton of time today. I'm disappointed about that. My first few cassettes were Billy Joel Glass Houses.
And what made you buy that album? Because you saw it on MTV, or you?
No, I probably heard it on the radio.
Okay,
and
that was a huge album in its time.
Yeah, I liked some of the songs. It's all rock and roll to me, that one. And as a kid, those songs did resonate with me, and I would still like them okay, but I don't really listen to it anymore. However, another album that I couldn't stop listening to back and forth was ELO Time.
Oh, yeah.
Which was, and I still put that on sometimes. That one even, I mean, I could not, it like got inside me. I mean, I was like, I just loved that album when I was a kid, and then rediscovered it in the era of Spotify. And it took me a minute to get refamiliarized with it, but then I was like, I remember this, and all these things. But the way I used to feel, and I was literally like 8 or 9 years old listening to that over and over again. I loved it.
Did you get into Traveling Wilburys?
I mean, only as much as like I heard a few of their hits.
Yeah.
I know, I like those guys. I like Tom Petty. Had a few Tom Petty albums.
Beatles, Stones. We listen to the Stones a lot on the road. We probably listen to Stones more. For some reason, we always listen to the Stones on the road. That's like a...
We do?
Yeah. Over the years, we've listened to a lot of the Stones.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we listen to...
And we bookend the show with the Stones.
We listen to Keith. That's true. That's where we hear a lot of it in our show. It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the Stones. Don't get me wrong. They may not be my... If I had to pick my one group, they didn't make my favorite album, did they?
No. Well, your favorite album being none other than...
And it wasn't easy. It's Physical Graffiti. It's the band is Led Zeppelin, for those that don't know. A lot of people know, but it's a double album, and it's sublime. Now,
Classic.
For a Zeppelin fan to say the best album, it's very difficult. And I'm sure it would be for a dedicated Stones fan as well. There's probably not one album. They'd be touring to Exile on Main Street and a Sticky Finger.
Yeah.
But that one's got that one, and you want all your favorite songs on one album. You can't have that.
Yeah, you can. The best of.
Yeah, but that's the ones on the charts. But anyway, this again, it's not a scientific decision, but this album, like if I had to go to the island and have one album, this is Led Zeppelin's one of arguably my favorite group. I've also like Hendrix is up there, Pink Floyd, because I love classic rock.
And this is good on the island because this is a double album.
Yeah, so you get your money's worth. You're getting a lot of tracks, and there's so many great tracks.
It is rare for a double album to have that many solid tracks.
And it's a nice bridge between Led Zeppelin's, their early albums, which were more very,
blues,
using a lot of blues-based rock and roll, but slowly getting more progressive. And towards the end, you've got lots of synth, and you've got some pretty
some funk in there.
Yeah, and they're experimenting, and there's great stuff. I mean, to be fair, a lot of Led Zeppelin fans think Presence is the greatest album because there's some of the tracks are phenomenal. I mean, Achilles' Last Stand is the one that comes to mind. It's one of my favorite songs. But this seems like a good bridge between the progressive Led Zeppelin and the early Led Zeppelin.
And there's also some acoustic in there.
Yeah.
Like I always warmed to Zeppelin 3. That to me was the album.
Am I meant to hold this up the whole time?
No.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Do what you want with it.
Okay, we'll put it here.
Zeppelin 3 was one that I always went back to. I don't know, because more of the acoustic stuff.
But that's a very acoustic, I think that a lot of that was recorded at a cottage in Wales. And I could be wrong, but I think they recorded that out in the country, and it's got that feel.
Yeah,
you can feel it.
And I remember you showed me how to play, or you showed me the chords to it many years ago. That's the Way. I always liked that song, but it was in a different tuning. And
it does. It does the open G tuning.
Yes.
I think that's really fun to play. Once you get the tuning, it's not the most difficult to play. To play it so. Like anything I play, if I say it's not difficult, it's still difficult to make it sound great or just play it as well as they played it. But I am a hobbyist guitarist, and
you do play, but you play well, and you play a lot. Was it Zeppelin or Hendrix, or what inspired you to initially pick up the guitar?
Well, even though I'd already liked Hendrix, when I first learned guitar, a big moment was when someone said, "Hey, look, here's how you play the opening few notes of Stairway to Heaven," which is arguably the most famous Led Zeppelin song, though it doesn't necessarily mean it's my favorite. I mean, it's amazing. That opening bar or measure. So I'm not very musically literate. Those first few notes, though, someone showed me that in high school, and the moment you can play something that you recognize and you think's cool, I think ironically, I never use the word ironic with confidence because I'm never sure if I use it correctly.
Likewise.
But that opening bit of the song was the contested part when they were taken to court by the estate of a guy, I think his name was Randy California, who claimed that he wrote that was his, and that he was on tour with Jimmy Page, maybe with Led Zeppelin, and that he would have heard him play that and then borrowed that. And when you do listen to the contested segment, you can hear a similarity. The rest of the song, it seems like it's doesn't relate to it at all, but I could hear it, and I could see why it made it as far as it did in court. But I think Led Zeppelin won the case, or Jimmy Page won the case. But anyway, digress. But I love Led Zeppelin. I love this album. You can't play anything off it because of copyright stuff.
What do you mean?
In your podcast.
No, I don't think so. I think that's...
No, you can't. Yeah, so I just thought, look, I don't want to... I don't know if I'm supposed to do that, but I brought my guitar today.
Yeah. Because
I want to show you why I love... I can't entirely show you the album, but I want to show you some of the parts that really moved me.
Well, please, by all means. I'd like to see.
Okay.
I'd like to hear.
So yeah, I brought my...
That's a nice guitar.
It's okay. Yeah, it's Telecaster.
Oh yeah.
It's
but is it a
No, it's not. It's not a particularly fancy guitar, but it's sort of... It's okay. Yeah. I never had a Tele before, so I bought this. It's kind of a low-end Tele, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's not fun to play. So, a lot of people know the song Kashmir on the album. That's a great song.
I love Kashmir.
Beautiful with the strings, and it's got kind of a Middle Eastern feel, and it's famous, and I love it, but I don't know how to play it, never learned it. But the one that I can't get enough of is the Rover, which... That's the opening riff, so I'm playing extra slow. I can always play better when I'm alone in a room, and as soon as I try to play for you...
Of course, all the time. I'm like that with piano. As soon as someone's watching...
I'm playing on the podcast, and so I'm aware that every mistake I have. So, but that's awesome. That's a very bluesy riff, that's rock song. But what I cannot get enough of is the chorus of this song. So what goes in the chorus, it's like this beautiful minor goes... I'll start over. It goes. Oops.
You're checking the tuning.
I thought
it sounds in tune. I don't think it's the tuning.
Yeah. The B string was up. I was like, why does that sound so weird? It couldn't be my playing.
Here we go. By the way, you practice every day, right, on the guitar now?
I don't want to admit that, but yeah. I do, so. Oh, I'm not playing it right. Okay, it goes. So, all right, so it starts, so it goes. Look, I mean, let's just say I'm lucky to have a job as a comedian. I have so much respect for musicians and how they dial in the music they play, and not just like the famous great musicians, but a musician steps up there.
Yes.
Plays with all these people watching and doesn't. I'm trying to play. I play that. I can play that way better. I'm in a room by myself. I'm nailing it.
Of course. It's that third eye that gets you. Yeah. Now we share a good friend, Mr. Akmal Sali.
Yeah.
He has a good friend, Frank, who lives up in Byron Bay.
Uh-huh.
Now Frank has.
I love Akmal. He's a good friend of mine too.
Yeah. Frank has a story of a friend of his that went camping in America. And he's out in the desert. There's a campsite there. He's got his acoustic guitar and he's playing some Zeppelin on it. And the guy with him says, "No, I think it goes like this." And he shows it like he goes, "No, it doesn't." They have this back and forth. And he goes, "Look, trust me, 100% it goes like that." And he says, "How can you be sure?" And he goes, "That's the way I wrote it." And that's when he realized he was talking to Jimmy Page.
Yeah, I think you told me that once. That's
what are your
incredible.
Thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's possible because from what people that have met him, you go through life and you like the guy who used to cut my hair in New York cut Jimmy Page's hair at one point. So he's telling me that he cut. So you do meet people that have met these people, as I'm sure you've had that experience. Like we both know Simon is friends with Keith Richards, for instance. So these things do happen. So you're able to say, what are they like? And Jimmy sounds like a real friendly guy and a real gentleman, and for all the stories I've heard, so I can see that. And he doesn't seem like he's walks into a place.
Yeah, he'd be unassuming.
Wearing a fur coat. He's pretty low key.
Yeah,
but he is Jimmy Page, and it's hard to know how that guy didn't go, "This guy's familiar." But people do,
But why would you think Jimmy Page is camping out in the middle of nowhere in America? Which is the sort of thing that he would probably do as well, but you wouldn't think, I'm here in a camping ground.
It's a crazy story. Another song on the album, is I know I'm conscious we don't have unlimited time.
No, we got all the time in the world.
My other favorite, well, there's lots of songs, but another one I love to try to play, and I have for years, is 10 Years Gone, which is a beautiful song because, well, musically it's beautiful, but also the idea that time slips by, and I think it's about, he's saying, "I never thought I'd see your face again," and the way it was. I can't, now I'm on the spot, I don't know the lyrics, but it's just a beautiful riff, so it's like, people might recognize it. Goes, and then it has that lovely, dreamy open.
Yes.
And again, this is what I mean, how it's not just a straight rock record. And then it goes into this real rock and roll, like. Then it goes back into that beautiful, and it's just flowing and picking up, and that riff is super fun to play. Ideally it has a different tuning, but I've always played it in standard, but it's like. It's just that lovely descending, that descending a thing that's happening. The notes, the way they go down, and it's very minor sounding, very beautiful. So, I mean, guitar is my favorite hobby. I should just be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I do love it, and I am a little bit sad that I'm not a guitarist, but I love comedy, and I'm thankful to be a comedian.
But you've to put guitar.
But we always, it's true, we always kind of secretly desire what we don't have. A lot of us, anyway.
But that's a common thing, though. A lot of comedians want to be rock stars. A lot of rock stars want to be comics too. You hear? Well, maybe they don't, but some of them have,
Yeah, and a few of them are cracking some. They got their shtick. I mean, you've told me how even the big boys will do the same gag in Sydney, and they'll do the same gag in Melbourne.
Sure. They got their set list.
Billy Joel, you told me about. He had a couple. And, you know, I don't know much else. I think I was trying to remember this one. It's like...
Oh, yeah.
That's the acoustic one you were talking about.
Yes.
That's my version. I never really checked it out if I'm even playing it correctly. And I hadn't played that in years. But I guess my point is that I love this album so much that I really would like to, you know, how do you get more closer to music? Well, you could try playing it, and that's a beautiful way. And for me, I just get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And like when I jam out with my friends, we play the Rover, and we do our own version.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not gonna ever probably be fit for an audience, but it's just fun as hell.
It's interesting with listening back through that album. Like we always tend to focus on Page and Plant, but Bonham's his drumming on that is phenomenal on a lot of these tracks.
Yeah.
Like I think the third track is As I Lie Dying. Like the drums on that is unbelievable.
Oh, by the way, I forgot. Like, not that I wasn't listening to you, John Bonham is, you know, amazing drummer.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I mean, and it's not just the guitar. The vocals are very, you know, Robert Plant's vocals are I mean, he's at the top of his game as far as I'm concerned during this album. And although, you know, he was on from from Led Zeppelin 1, like the range is insane and the energy is insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to say, right? But what's the best? But anyway, this is one I chose. But there's another song. Maybe I can't believe I forgot to tell you. Maybe my favorite one on the whole album because of the message. It's so beautiful. In the Light.
Yes. That transition in that song when it's about halfway through when it feels like it's
a simple song, but it's pretty much as I recall when I tried to learn it. It's 3 riffs, but it wouldn't be simple for me. But it's so beautiful and it's such an uplifting thing. Like in the light.
Yes.
Everybody needs the light. You will find the way in the light, and it's sort to me. It's saying, you know. That we all go through tough times, but we can also go into the light. And it reminds me of the thing you hear from people with near-death experiences, which this would be a great segue to talk about my favorite book. But they often say they go towards the light. And when we die, according to anecdotal accounts of people that had an experience, many of us will die and then be drawn towards this light that's you know, like brighter than a billion suns, but it doesn't hurt your eyes, and you just go into it and you feel like you're home. So I don't know if that's the message of that song, but it's just a beautiful piece of music, and I recommend anyone checking it out to find the alternative versions online too. There's some really stripped down versions where John Paul Jones, who we also should mention, who's bass and also keyboards, he actually plays the main riff.
Right.
In one version of In the Light, instead of Jimmy Page, and it's wild. It's really cool, and the lyrics, the vocals on that one are incredible. So, love In the Light. Maybe my. If I even had to pick one track, I'm not even kidding. It might be In the Light.
Really?
It'd be In the Light or 10 Years Gone.
Yeah.
But as for jamming, I like playing the Rover because I can.
Sure.
As my friend Johnny likes to say, it's achievable. Meaning guys like us we can sort of play it.
Yeah.
We're not gonna. How good are we gonna play it? I don't know, but it's achievable. That's his phrase. He's very protective of his sayings.
And we all know Johnny's favorite band.
Yeah, he loves the Stones big time. Yeah.
Everything the Stones.
Yeah, he likes the Stones.
But just as you were talking then, I was thinking I could ask you about the whole, because you've done a lot of research on near-death experiences and the afterlife.
Well, I've done research in terms of I've Googled stuff, so that makes me a researcher. I guess we're all researchers.
But you've read a lot of books on it. You've investigated it over the years.
I have read 7 books on it, so it's not a big deal, and I'm not trying to brag. But no, I'm interested in that because to me it's a question worth exploring. What happens when I die? Is that it? Is it just lights out, nothing? An atheist will say yes. A deeply religious person will say definitely not. Mm-hmm. I consider myself agnostic because I don't think until you have that experience can you really say. I would probably lean towards atheism if there wasn't all these accounts of people whose hearts had stopped and or they were frozen in a river, and suddenly they had the most vivid experience of their life. They said, a lot of times they say, someone say, well, could it have been a dream? Was it dream like? They said, no, it was more real than right now. It was more real than what I'm experiencing now. And that's over and over again. You hear that. And so, I mean, again, I don't know. I don't have the final say. But there are serious researchers looking into it. What's going on? Sure. If nothing else, it's a fascinating end-of-life mechanism. But people leave their bodies and like they can see themselves, their body on the road, or they can see the paramedics trying to revive them, and they're looking from above or from a different perspective, so they're actually outside of their body. And there are a lot of cases where they're able to recount details that you wouldn't have expected them to see, as if they have seen something and they're able to describe it.
And it's interesting because our idea of what the afterlife might be is only within our realm of understanding too, or within what we deem to be our reality, which links us to the book that you've chosen, which is questioning, right? Whether what we live in is reality or whether we even know what reality is. Yeah. And that's the case for reality. How Evolution Hid the Truth from Our Eyes by Donald D. Hoffman.
Do you want me to, am I supposed to take the book?
Okay. That's the cue.
This is a great book. This is, the case against reality, and the subtitle is How Evolution Hid the Truth from Our Eyes by Donald D. Hoffman. He's not my favorite guy right now because I'm always looking for, I am a seeker, I want answers, I'm not going to get them, but I'm curious, and part of it is my own, like, I have a great life and I'm thankful for it. I have my ups and downs like anyone, but I love my job and I'm grateful, but at the same time there is part of me that's like, is this it? I just work, as long as I'm able to work, or earn a living, thankful for that, but then that's it. Then I eventually get, if I'm lucky, I get to become an old man, but then I die and that's it. And that's life. Is that the whole? So I'm one of those people that's a little bit like, I'm a little unhappy with that, the idea that that's all there is to this. Have fun, obviously from a biological standpoint, procreate, which I haven't done, but so I just am interested, and I'm not a religious person really, although I do like reading about Buddhism, which is it's a religion, but there's a very philosophical side to it, which I'm more drawn to that than the actual like learning about the deities or.
But I think the ideas transcend religion too. A lot of the books that you've read in the past, like The Power of Now. I remember years ago, I think you bought that book for me, and the ideas in that where he was taking on, he was incorporating different religious ideas into this bigger thing that's beyond one category. Which
absolutely, because there's a difference between spiritual and religious. And for me, that means spiritual just means something perhaps that's non-physical and something to do with the bigger picture, and I don't know, it's not something you can put in a box, it's spiritual, but whereas religious indicates a set of doctrine or rules maybe, or stories that are attached to it, whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or whatever, but I don't have anything. I'm not trying to make this about different religions, whatever pros and cons. But when you just want to look at the truth, you might find something and say, "Well, that is kind of similar to what something Jesus said, or Buddha said that," and now science confirms that there's some truth to that. What's really fascinating is the areas where ancient teachings or wisdom coincides with what science figures out. Like,
sure.
Like the way quantum mechanics work is pretty wild. And there's whole books written on it, the Tao of Physics and stuff. And again, I have to always preempt this with same with the guitar. I'm not an expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a researcher beyond the guy with Google and a curiosity. But I'll try to give you a brief overview. What this guy has done is he's as soon as you listen to an interview, you're like, man, he's not just some wacko, like he's just saying controversial things. Yeah, you listened to the podcast with me on the way home last night and from our gig, and he's a proper researcher. He's a super sharp guy, and he basically says that using what they call evolutionary game theory, which is accepted to be true out of it's very respected theory and very almost unanimously accepted by the scientific community as to be useful and true. He said, using evolutionary game theory, he and his colleagues tested whether organisms would evolve through natural selection to see reality as it is. Mm-hmm. I hope I said that right. And basically, what they found out was the odds that life evolves to see reality as it is. The odds of that happening are, and he always likes to say, exactly zero.
Right.
Like
so it sort of tricks us in order to get its result.
There's zero chance that we're seeing, according to evolutionary game theory, which I'm no expert of. Sorry, I'm so disappointing. It's like, Arj, you don't really know much about what you're talking about.
I'm listening to him last night, and it's fascinating, but it's very dense. And you're paying attention, and then he's using references to things that I don't know about. So it's like you get a bit.
That was one of the easier conversations. He was like going, he didn't have his foot on the pedal.
But I mentioned last night as we were listening to that, when if evolution is deceiving us in a way from the truth of reality in order for us to reproduce, and that's its end game, then it's very limited. My first instinct was, well, that's limited because the more that we reproduce as a species, we're going to ruin the host, which is Earth, because there's going to be too many of us, and it's going to defeat the purpose of what the evolutionary theory is trying to achieve. Well,
if you look at populations of some animals that overpopulate, it seems like each species is, the way it works is it's just trying to make as many of itself as it can. So if you see a certain type of crab takes over a whole ocean and kills everything else, it's just survival of the fittest.
Yeah, but then the ecosystem's out of whack.
Yeah, I don't know if evolution takes into account, I better think about the Earth.
Environmental issues,
It just has, it's sort of like an algorithm that life follows, like the more fitter for reproducing survive, and the ones that aren't fit, they don't survive.
So like a virus, in a way. That's how a virus operates, right?
Yeah, people have often compared humanity to a virus, but and Joe Rogan, in fact, I've heard him do that. I haven't listened to a ton of his podcasts, but I've heard a few, and I've heard him say that.
He's spoken about you on his podcast, I heard.
Well, now I'm speaking about him on yours.
Look at that.
Big shout out to my friend Joe, who I hear he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Out in the States, so good for him.
He's got something going there.
But you should check it out, the Joe Rogan Experience, if you haven't heard about it. I know he's always been nice. I can't say anything negative about him.
Sure.
I know that there's people that think say this and that, but I'm not wading into that about his political leanings or who he has on.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm staying out of that. But he has always been very cool.
Sure.
So I'm happy to say hello. But what were we talking? Oh yeah. So this is crazy because what he's saying is that he goes pretty far in this book. Most scientists assume that space-time is fundamental It's primary. Space-time exists, and then everything comes out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Space-time includes matter and forces and all that. What he's saying, and based on math of some of the smartest mathematicians in the world, is that space-time is a limited system.
Right.
That it's not the base reality. It's more of a, he likes to call it a construct that helps us navigate reality.
Mm-hmm.
So we see things as they are, because if we saw reality as it really was, we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't know what to do. And now an analogy, and I'm borrowing all this from Donnie, my man. He says that when you have your report, that you wrote on your computer, and it's just a little emblem of a little
icon.
Yeah, a little icon. You can move it around and send it to your friend and open it up and work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the report. That's just a symbol that helps you navigate the report and manipulate the report.
Mm-hmm.
The report itself is millions of little electrical currents and switches inside the computer, and it's all the...
And that's the reality.
That's more like reality.
See.
So, yeah,
right.
We're able to see this, this couch and, this book, because if we were to see what really was beneath it,
the makeup of it.
Yeah, it would just probably be like, we wouldn't be able to...
Atoms and neutrons and...
But why is it like that? And that's one of the questions that I don't know how far he goes to answering it, but he does definitely suggest and very much diverge from what a majority of scientists believe. So now we got to get into that conversation pretty quick. Most scientists assume that if you put atoms in the right configuration, you'll create consciousness, i.e., or I should say, e.g., a brain.
Mm-hmm.
If I could manipulate individual atoms, I could build a brain. If I could build it correctly, it would be conscious.
Right.
So they're basically saying that the brain is a machine that somehow creates consciousness. And that's just assumed to be the way it is. Yet they can't...
scientifically prove what consciousness...
Well, yeah, there's a handful of theories, but they've been trying for decades.
I've always found that the smartest people seem to keep room open for that.
That's true.
That there isn't any real, definable, definitive answer, but with the information at hand, it's what I believe to be true.
Well, there's a famous thing called the I forget his name, but it's the incompleteness theory, and it's that every time you prove something, you'll open a whole other group of questions.
Yeah.
And you'll have a whole other project on your hands. You'll never have complete certainty about everything, because there will always be an element of incompleteness to anything that you can prove, and he's well accepting of that. And he says, a lot of my theories might not prove to be true, but we need to have theories so that we can come up with new theories, and that's how science moves. And I love that he's very scientific, but he's a good writer as well. So the book I haven't quite finished it, but I can still say it's my favorite book, because it is at the moment, and it's fantastic. And I like the idea of someone with a science background saying, wow, the world really is mysterious, and we don't know everything. And by the way, we can move on, but I would just say that if you think that I'm just like spewing some hippie shit about consciousness, it's considered either the number one or number two, depending what survey you looked at, biggest question in science is, how does the brain create consciousness? But the fact that they don't know means, why don't we also ask, does the brain create consciousness? Because if it doesn't, that changes everything. Mm-hmm. And people, again, they think, Arj, you've lost your mind. No, I haven't. Because, a lot of people don't realize...
No, that's true. That's always been the big question in science.
Do you think this is blue?
Blue.
Is that blue?
It appears.
Is the cover?
That flower appears blue.
And that bit's purple.
It appears so.
And that's a bit of yellow and it gets orangey, right? Well, I got news for you, bud. There's no color on this page. There's only photons and different wavelengths of energy. All the colors being created by your ocular nerves and the transmissions thereafter to your brain. All the color is happening in your brain. There's no color here. And so when you start taking that further, you have, there's been great philosophers that have said, is there anything really out there, or is it all happening in my mind?
Yeah.
And same thing with sounds and smells. They're not out there. They only exist because there's a perceiver. And there's more and more. And also you find in quantum mechanics, the double slit experiment, which is so famous. I don't really have time to explain it, but people can look it up. But the point is, what we do know, I didn't figure it out, by the way, but they figured out that particles respond differently if they're being watched or not. So
yes.
So the basic...
Yeah, you can't get the same result once it's observed.
The basic idea is, as the observer, you can't observe something without affecting it, without becoming part of it. Mm-hmm. And so there's clues telling us that consciousness and awareness they're a big part of the answers we're looking for. And so I think he'll get a Nobel Prize someday. I think he deserves it already, but anyway, that's how I feel, and it's my favorite book, and that's my favorite book.
Well, one thing that is real and is tangible is your favorite film.
My favorite film. I'm so excited.
I look down. Usually we have the favorite film in front of us to hand, but...
It's hard to find. It's hard to find.
I could not get the physical copy of it.
I can explain plenty about it. It's called The Nut Farm. And it's this really awesome, I guess I would describe it as like a family-friendly, it's PG, so it's not like some raunchy, it's not like The Hangover or whatever, which had some great actors in it. It's not really my favorite comedy film. It was okay, but I didn't think, a lot of people went bananas over it. Sure, yeah. I'm not a massive Hangover fan, but friends and some of the actors in House of Respect, there's very good actors in it, very funny people, but The Nut Farm it's a simple story, it's a wholesome story. It's about a cryptocurrency trader. I don't know why you're laughing.
It's funny, it's a comedy.
It's a cryptocurrency trader who lives in San Francisco. Yeah. His name is Brendan Brandon, and which is a funny name, Brendan Brandon.
It is, yeah.
And
it's got a good ring to it.
He inherits a macadamia farm. He goes broke trading crypto, and right around that time he inherited a macadamia farm on the east coast of Australia in the Northern Rivers region. And it's set in a fictional town called Cobweb. And it's just, I don't know, it's a fun movie. It's got a lot of eccentric characters, and he has to go there. And I sort of think of the film a little bit almost like Crocodile Dundee in reverse. Because, Crocodile Dundee, you have old mate goes over to America. City. Well, we have an American septic tank coming over to Australia and being immersed in this, the country culture and all the creatures and he's afraid of, are they going to kill him? And it's comedy, but it's also, it's in a way it's an homage to some of the things that people know about this country and love about it.
Yeah,
and also. Sure. The tight-knit rural communities, but it's got a really eccentric characters, and I'll tell you, the cast is fantastic. It's got Roy Billings, who's a superb Kiwi actor. Yep. Madeline West, she plays the love interest, and she's terrific in it. And who else is in it? Tiriel Mora, who played the lawyer in one of the most iconic Australian films of all time, is The Castle.
Yeah. It's classic.
I think a lot of people haven't heard about the Nut Farm is also an Australian film.
Yeah. And
he played the lawyer who said it's the vibe of the Constitution. Your Honor, it's about the vibe. Remember? I don't know if you remember that guy. I haven't seen it, but I heard about it. He's in it. Right. He plays a lawyer. Yeah. Interestingly enough, not the same character, but he plays the lawyer. He's terrific. And John O'Roberts plays the villain is a Kiwi. Get this, a Kiwi fracker.
Oh, which is very
environmental.
But in that area too, in the Northern Rivers area, that's
it was an issue up there.
Local community.
It is an issue, and they said no, we don't want it. And they've been pretty successful. And it's a lot of fun, and it's just a great movie.
And who's the star of the film?
Oh, like the lead?
Yeah, the lead co-writer.
I am.
So
I am.
So you've.
But I mean, that's not why I love it. That's not why it's my favorite film. It's just a great film. But yeah, I helped write it and starred in it.
Yeah. And it hasn't come out yet, though.
No, it's not out yet.
No.
No, we're trying to get it out.
I'm looking forward to seeing this film.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You want to watch it?
Yeah, of course.
I can show it to you.
Really? I thought I was going to have to go to the premiere to see it.
No, I mean I have a link.
Get a copy of it.
To a copy.
And it's going to be released looking like next year.
It looks like 2024. The Nut Farm will come out. Again, Australian made, which they don't make a lot of comedies in this country. They don't get made. It's hard to make a movie. No. It's an Australian made, mostly Australian crew, mostly Australian cast. So there's a few Kiwis, and obviously I'm American. But I wrote it with two other friends, Sam Bowring and Scott Corfield.
Yeah, Sam's great. Yeah, and Scott's a lovely guy.
And Scott directed it.
Yes.
And we're proud of it. We made a cool movie.
The fact that you got a film made and produced and shot and in the can, and it's coming up, it's going to get distribution. That is a major accomplishment.
I've done a little acting, but this was this was like going from dabbling to being in 90% of the scenes of the film, and and you could argue, I have to kind of carry a movie, so. It was a great challenge for me. Yeah,
how did you find it? Because, you've done Flight of the Conchords, you're in What We Do in the Shadows and the TV series. Like, how did you find that going from playing, they were major roles in those,
not really.
But, they're memorable,
Memorable, but doesn't mean major.
Well, the Dave character, that was a reoccurring, main character.
Didn't even make the DVD box, but anyway, I'm not bitter about that. I'm not going to bring it up, whatever, HBO.
But the difference between playing that and then, the whole film, you're in probably like 90% of the scenes in this film.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Yeah. I didn't have that much time to think about being worried about it because I was so busy trying to learn lines and do. I just did my best. The way all you can do with anything, is just do your best. And it's like getting dressed. You just you put you try to do your. You don't think about it. You put shorts first, then pants, then shoes. If you do it in the wrong order, it doesn't work out. It's just one of those things. Acting is about just. It's about forgetting you're acting, just being in there,
listening
and.
Responding.
Responding.
Yeah.
Repeating. It was fun. It was a great challenge, and it's a fun movie.
That's great.
And it turned. When we first conceived of it, I didn't realize that it would be what it is. But things take on a life of their own. It's become this really sweet, fun. I think majority of people will have some laughs, some lulls. Because I think there's something for everyone. But I think it's something you could watch with your kids. You could watch with your grandma or something and laugh. And it's it's just fun. I don't know what else to say. I'm excited for it to come out.
Fantastic. Well, you've turned up for me in the past. I look forward to turning up to the premiere of that and being there.
You're a good friend, Joe. I mean, when you were getting married, I said, that's it. I'm there. Because there's only one wedding, and you go to the wedding.
Yeah.
Okay, there's not two, there's one. And you got to be there.
Yeah. Well.
And I was there.
You were, and I was there for you.
Yeah, you sure were, Bill.
We're always there for each other. Thank you,
Arj.
Yeah,
you bet, my friend.
Love you, pal.
I love you too. It's great. Thanks for having me on the show.
And thank you for doing this. It was great to sit down.
Well, it's not every day that a comedian starts a podcast. So
no. Well, I wanted to wait until the market was completely oversaturated, and then I'll get in.
I think it's cool what you've done.
Yeah, no, I know you do, and I appreciate that.